today I'm speaking with Dr. Patti Britton. She's a clinical sexologist, a sexuality educator, and is known as the mother of sex coaching. So she actually trains other people to be sex coaches. She's a well-respected world leader. She's an academic. She's a speaker, trainer. And today we're going to be talking about aging and intimacy. It's a fantastic conversation that I'm really grateful to be able to share with you. So enjoy. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast for this week. This week is going to be an amazing conversation that I cannot wait to get into. I have the incredible Dr. Patti Britton with me today. Hi, how are you?
Hi, excited to be here.
So Dr. Patti is a sexologist, which I love. And specifically today, what we want to talk about is intimacy and aging. I know that for myself, I'm in a newish relationship. I've met my partner online during COVID. So with all the odds stacked against me, I was able to find my love, but I'm 53 years old. And so it's like, okay, being intimate with my partner is very different to what it used to be like when I was married or back, when I was dating in my 20s. And so I think my first question to you, Dr. Patti, is, what is the difference? Like, what makes it different for us? Like, why is it different when we get older, that intimacy can sometimes be a challenge?
Well, there are a lot of changes that we go through, as you well know, and any of us knows who has gone past that really, really rocky time of perimenopause. So we can talk about the biological, we can talk about the psychological, the social, and we're in a new world in terms of online dating. So maybe when we grew up, and I'm a lot older than you. In fact, I'm old enough to be your mom. And and saying that, I mean that from my heart, that having evolved through things like, the sex revolution, the love revolution of the 1960s, and working on my memoir, my memories are like really connected right now. I know that it depends when we grow up and what the social norms are. And also, it's new and different. Living in an online world, which the pandemic has reinforced so beautifully, and how wonderful that you found your love, because that's not so easy to do. And I want our listeners and viewers to know that you really need training, skills, and a savvy about how you approach online dating. It's not the same as in real life, in real time. When you see someone and you feel someone, it's very, very different when you're shopping. And I tell people who are my clients or my students at Sex Code 2, for example, that it's really a fishing expedition, and you need to know how to fish, and you need to know how to cut the line when it's time to cut the line. And so, we have to sort of embrace our new bodies, our new physiology, our new hormonal status. Once we're past the perimenopause and we're either in the perimenopause, that era when we're moving toward not being fertile anymore, it's a really huge change for cisgendered females, for embodied females. And also, we need to know what it's like post-menopause, because there are so many, okay, I'm going to tell you, the ravages of aging on the body. And, this is I love working with the baby boomer generation in my client types, as well as other types. The sexless relationship is really the predominant theme for most of us who work in sexology and have clients. But there's something so special about serving my peers, serving the baby boomer generation, and giving them permission to explore and experiment and feel alive, sexually alive, but also giving them guidelines and guidance about how to navigate this time and this space that we're in, especially with online dating. Does that make sense?
It does. I think that from my experience, I was married for 20 years. And, in the beginning, we had the wonderful sex life and amazing and awesome. Yeah. Then you kind of get to this point. And I think for definitely the last 2 years, we were definitely in a sexless marriage. We had drifted apart. And of course, once you stop being intimate, then you stop being affectionate, and then you kind of get to a point where you've got nothing to say to each other. And I think that when you've been in a relationship for a long time like that, even like for me, I think it was I just felt weird asking for sex. Like it had gone that long. And I thought, so what are some of the mental things that we go through, or that you see coming up with the clients that you work with, that stops us from having sex, and then, how different and the challenges that we face trying to re-engage or reignite that passion in a relationship?
Well, deep questions, really important questions that you're asking. First of all, there's a physical reality, and that's really our brain. Right. And what happens is, this is the work of Helen Fisher, which we've known for decades now. When we first are in love or in lust, we are firing off certain hormones in the brain. We're on fire, we're in love, we're hot. And that's when lust is really happening. That's desire. That's that, can't stop thinking about him, her, them. But then what happens over time is that our neurochemicals shift and we become bonded or attached. That's what healthy relationships are really based on. And that's what intimacy is really based on, is a healthy way of being vulnerable, being known, being seen. Sex does not necessarily equal intimacy is a message I really want to shout out, because intimacy is a word that if we're uncomfortable, I'm not saying you, but I'm saying that I often have clients who say to me, well, we're no longer intimate, and yet they are intimate. They really are being exposed to one another. They're being honest with each other. They know each other sometimes too well. Okay, they become brother, sister, they become roommates. And that's such a common phenomenon. I'm going to say something that may not feel good, and that is that it actually takes attention and intention, AKA work, to keep it hot. And the reason is, some of the science shows that what we need to do is we need to add surprise and excitement, and we need to actually do new things. We need to be sexual adventurers in order to re-stimulate the parts of our brain, dopamine in particular, to get us turned on again, because it can be what I used to call SSDD, same stuff, different day. And it's boring. I think that sexual boredom is something that we're kind of scared or feel maybe a little bit ashamed to say about our partnerships, our loverships. And actually we need to keep it fresh. And sometimes we really need to change it up. That might mean something like getting a brand new sex toy. I know it sounds so trite, but I have so many clients who are saying, darling, you need to go to this store online and you need to order this new amazing clitoral sucker, for example, or this amazing G-spot stimulator, or whatever it is that he or she or they would enjoy to reignite that energy of sex and desire for one another. And I want to say that over time, it is much more common for relationships to fall off the track. And sometimes when I get clients, often that is a train wreck. It's not just they've fallen off the track. It's a train wreck. And they have to begin to rebuild their connection. They have to rebuild feeling safe and trusting of one another. And they have to be willing to be authentic. And I think that sometimes being authentic means we don't even know ourselves. Right. And at our age, when we're midlife or we're later in life, as women in particular, there's just so much support today for us to really know who we are and understand how our bodies work and how our minds work, and be open to what I hope that people really are open to experiencing, and that is more love in their lives. Sex is not necessarily intimacy, and sex is not necessarily love. But I think that's one of the missing elements today.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
I love that. No, I'm in my experience, yeah, my ex-husband and I definitely got into the brother-sister kind of energy. Like We've been friends, and it was like us against the world, and, building business and all of that. But then, and then we sort of started to want and look at different things, like not look at different things, but want different things, and wanted to pursue different things. And then it just kind of became this canyon of things that I just could never say. And I felt like I had gone too far kind of thing. So
yeah. And, there is a really cool formula that I'm going to share with all of you. And that is, it came out of a book called The Erotic Mind by Jack Moran. He's no longer alive. And it was just this amazing way of looking at relationships, particularly as they get more boring or less connected, is what I want to say. And that formula is E for excitement. So E equals A for attraction, plus, here's the most important part, PO, perceived obstacle. So when we're in a long-term committed relationship, what happens is there's no obstacle anymore. Oh yeah, I know. He's in the other room on the computer. He's around, especially if you have the double indemnity of having a life partner who's your lover, who's also your business partner. Been there, done that. You got to work really hard to create space. Okay, to create distance. That's what a perceived obstacle really is. And often we get just sort of slouching into this, them, oh, yeah. It's not exciting. It's not the way we felt when we were initially dating that person, or even if they went away. So often what I say to couples is, send your partner away just for the evening, just so that you can have desire, so you can long and want. Because that's what happens when we're with someone day in, day out, is that there's no room or space for desire to flow. And it's when desire goes away that we stop having that connection for an intimate, if not erotic, if not sexual experience with that person.
I love that.
Make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense.
I love that formula. E equals A plus PO.
Love it. So I want to move now into, for those of us who have been dating, like I said, I met my partner just recently. And at this age, we kind of, I think for some of us, maybe we haven't had sex for a while. And we always joke about, wow, I don't even know if it works anymore. Maybe it's closed over. Who knows? But we have, these mental blocks that I think are self-imposed when it comes to being intimate with someone. What are some of the things that you've seen that come up for women who are, at the time of their life going, the thought of having sex with someone else is a bit of a daunting thought for me?
Well, first of all, you may not want to hear this, those of you who are watching or listening, but use it or lose it is real. And so self-love, self-pleasure, masturbation is an essential component of healthy sexuality for all of us, if you're not engaging in partner sex. So what does that mean? What it means is that if you don't energize or even utilize these parts of our body that require blood flow, that require tactile stimulation, what's going to happen is they're going to atrophy. And some of that atrophy can also result in a fusing of how your sexual anatomy looks. For example, you may have had a body where, hopefully as females, you've looked at your body at a very close way in a mirror setting where you know what you look like on the inside, because we're internal, we're not visual like nails are. And so what's so important is understanding that keeping blood flow, keeping energy flow, keeping hygiene, and really stimulating for health is what this is all about. So that's part one. Part two is that as we age and go through, as I was talking about earlier, perimenopause or postmenopausal, we have a decline in our estrogen in particular, and in our progesterone, and in our testosterone, which women also make. I believe, and science has really substantiated, testosterone is really still regarded in many ways as the hormone of desire, of edge. And that's an important thing that we lose just as men lose as we age. Secondly, estrogen decline usually results in, when we're experiencing anything inside the vagina, such as penile penetration, what that can lead to is painful sex. So it can feel like sandpaper. It can feel like, searing pain upon insertion or even in thrusting. That's why healthy, good lubes, personal lubricants, are so important for the aging woman. And why really having an excellent GYN or other specialist who can look at your sexual health care can guide you in terms of hormonal therapies. There's a lot of controversy around hormonal replacement therapy and hormonal therapies in general. There's a whole thing about bioidentical versus synthetic. And, I read the literature every week, and I laugh because there's such a war going on in medicine around that. And it's really important to give yourself, I'm going to say that word again, permission to experience pleasure. Pleasure is actually a part of our health. Right. And if we don't allow ourselves to have pleasure, we're shrinking, we're shriveling up as human thriving beings. So I think that's some of the hurdles that as we age, women have to overcome, include that kind of self-talk like, oh, I don't know, I'm scared it's going to hurt. It may. So you need to really know your body and understand there are things that you can do. But also, am I entitled to this? Do I deserve this kind of pleasure? Do I deserve love, a new love, a lover in my life as I'm at this new stage of life? And the answer is you do. But you have to give that to yourself. And then you have to approach it appropriately, because there's no such thing as the rule book. And this annoys me to no end when I'm interviewed for podcasts or anything, a broadcast. And, the question is, oh, Dr. Patti, how many dates? Is it the third date or the fourth date when it's okay to be sexual? It's like, oh, cut that out.
Yeah.
We're grown-ups, okay? I hope. And we know who we are, and we know how to make informed choices as long as we're being safe in terms of our health care, because that's another thing. There's a lot of data to show that sometimes older people, when they're having sex with a new person, are not using things like condoms for SDI, or as we used to say, STD, STI prevention and protection. And we need to really make sure that we're healthy and we stay healthy. And, certainly using condoms and other ways of preventing. It's not about pregnancy once you stop being fertile. Right. It's really about spreading disease. And so it's very important that we use that kind of self-care. So there's a lot to say about engaging in a new relationship, isn't there?
Yeah. And I think it's not just the physical thing, but mentally. I think one of the huge hurdles that I had to overcome, because, the last time I dated, I was a 20-something-year-old aerobics.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And now I'm a 53-year-old woman. Yeah. So it's like, not exactly the same, but really getting to that point where I could see myself as beautiful, that I could feel beautiful. In my 30s, I was in this mental loop for like a decade of not feeling good about my body, which I know really reflected back in, part of the reason why I wasn't intimate as much with my husband, because I wasn't feeling beautiful in myself. Yeah. And so that mental shift was something that I really had to get to be able to open myself up to intimacy this time in my life.
Well, I think that body image issues is probably the loudest gremlin voice in our heads. And body shaming, our self-shaming around our body. And as we age, especially so here's what happens. As the estrogen goes down and stress is happening, what is happening around our middles is a tire is growing. Right. And this shape of donuts around the center of our bodies is emerging. And we're going, what the hell is that? Who are you in the mirror? Because we're going through shifts that are normal, that are biological. Now, we can do something about that. But at the same time, stress is not our friend. Cortisol is our enemy, actually, and it will adhere itself to fat, as will estrogen. The last little vestiges of estrogen will find fat cells to attach to. And so I think body image, just claiming your beauty, finding where your beauty is, looking for beauty. I often do mirror exercises for my clients, both males and females, so that they can be guided to look for the positives and to say that to yourself. You have to love you first before someone else can love you or find you beautiful or sexy or attractive. So it's really that self relationship that's the foundation for any kind of a partnership.
Right. No, I do love that. And so I know I mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast that you are a sexologist. So what does that mean exactly?
Well, a sexologist is someone who is trained as a specialist in helping people with human sexuality. It could be a sex researcher. It could be somebody who is a sexuality educator or a blogger. It could be someone who is a board certified sexologist who has a sex therapy certification. My mission in life is to train competent, caring, compassionate professionals who want to really help their clients heal their sexual wounding, and fulfillment is really the goal, and pleasure and wellness. And that is because sexology is the broad tent under which so many different professions live. Sexology is really the study of what people do sexually and how they think and feel about it. So as a clinical sexologist, my doctoral training was in how to work with clients and help them overcome their obstacles and their roadblocks to being fully fulfilled. And I train sex coaches. I'm known as the mother of sex coaching because I founded that as its own unique profession in 1993. And I've been training professionals since then all around the world to know how to do that. It's a very different way of working with clients that's just so fun, so collaborative, so empowering, so positive, helping them really become fully who they could be as sexual beings.
Yeah. Well, you bring up a very important point because, you know, not only are we as women not the spring chickens that we used to be, there are the men that we're dating. Yes. So and sometimes there could be different things that come up in a sexual situation. You're like, oh, is that me? Or is this, you know, a regular thing or a normal thing for a guy to be experiencing? So what are some of those things that we want to, you know, be aware of, you know, with our partners as we meet them as we're older?
Great question. So males have a decline earlier than females by and large. And unfortunately or fortunately, what that means is that women are often still ahead of the game when it comes to their functioning. I don't use medical terminology. I like to really use words and concepts that allow people to feel natural. There's no such thing as normal. What there is there are evolutionary or de-evolutionary things that happen as we age. Some of that hormonal decline in females is happening in males. It's just happening earlier. And the thing that happens for men, and again, you know, your audience is, I'm sure, all over the spectrum. And when I talk about males or females or men and women, I'm talking predominantly about heterosexuals, and I'm talking predominantly about cisgendered people. What happens for younger men is the number one issue that plagues them is earlier rapid ejaculation. So they, quote, come too quickly. What happens as men age is good news, which is because they slow down. So they often experience not having that orgasm when they want it, but particularly erectile challenges. So as guys age, it's harder to produce an erection. It's harder to keep an erection going. And that's really what plagues, I think, a lot of older men. And then for females, if having penetrative sex or sexual intercourse, penis and vagina sex, is what she likes, what happens is he's not able to keep that going. So I always am teaching and encouraging my clients to look for different pathways, not only for their pleasure and their connection, but for a pathway to orgasm. Now, there's a lot of literature in the world that says, for women, orgasm is not the goal. It's the journey that matters. Okay, I think that's great, and I agree with that. However, there's nothing like a great orgasm. Nothing in the world. So I'm very much an advocate for my clients to experience orgasm and to teach them ways to actually open up that process, that pattern for them. And also, men also are experiencing negative talk within themselves about their body image. Their hair, they lose their hair, they may freak out about that. They develop maybe a paunch, putting on weight, and they're not being fit physically, because physical fitness is part of sexual wellness. And so I'm like the cheerleader in the background saying, okay, guys, did you get to the gym this week? Did you stop drinking so much? I certainly hope you're not smoking, because smoking will kill erectile function and will eventually kill you. So, there are so many aspects to what allows us to be well and allows us to experience successful sexual experiences. But pleasure and health, those are really the keys that I want to say.
Right. So as women, how can we lovingly support our partners if this is, a situation that they're facing right now?
You've got to learn how to help them. You've got to learn things like not to be critical and judgmental, but to know your own self, to know what works for you, and to be able to create what I have always taught and always used, which is the technique called the positive sandwich. Don't ever deliver critical information without putting a wonderful fat hamburger bun around it and then sliding in the bad thing you want to say and then another fat bun. Because I find, and this is really my perception, I find that men have very fragile egos, and that women are socialized to be better communicators, better talkers for the most part. And so knowing how to ask for what we want and what we need, I still think women have a lot of shame around that, but women are getting a lot more messaging that it's okay, go for it. But we have to be really gentle with males. I don't know if you experience that, but I see it in my male clients. They're like, they're taught to armor themselves and not have feelings, but really they're very vulnerable on the inside. And so I want everyone to feel their power, their personal power. That's how I work with my clients, male, female, or other. And I think it's so important that we come from a respectful and a loving place when we're giving feedback to our partner. And there are lots of tools that guys can use. They could get a prescription and use something that sustains erectile function, because that's what Levitra, Cialis, and Viagra do. And Cialis daily is always one of the choices that many men use to sustain their ability to keep an erection going. It doesn't produce erections, it keeps erections going. That's what these inhibitors are really designed to do, the erectile dysfunction drugs. Also, there are penis rings that can be used that keep the blood flow in the penis. Notice where my hand is. Yep. At the base of the penis, once it's erect or semi-erect, putting a ring around that can actually keep blood flow inside the shaft of the penis, which is what helps a male to sustain erection. And knowing that there are alternative ways to experience closeness and sensual and sexual pleasure, and not freaking out if things aren't working. Sometimes humor is your best antidote for things not working in the bedroom.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love that, the sandwich is a very important way to be able to deliver that. But I think also, yes. Not spiraling into that, oh my God, it must be me, he's not attractive, maybe I'm not doing what he wants. But, having that, right. That conversation. And like you said, if you can inject some humor there and make light of a situation, then that really does goes a long way. That's for sure. So Dr. Patti, I want to thank you so much for your time today. You have been a wealth of information. And, like I was saying to you before we were on the podcast, I love how I get to open up these kind of conversations.
Absolutely.
And model what it's like, because, we all go through very similar things. We don't have to suffer in silence or, feel isolated, that we can open up these conversations like this is really the reason I do the podcast. So thank you for helping me do that today.
And I want to leave one last message, well, two maybe. And one of them is, if things don't go right in the bedroom, it's not always about you. So don't make it about you, because I think that women tend to say, oh, it must be my fault. That's our default setting. Don't go there. And look at yourselves as a team, even if you've just met this person. You're on parallel tracks together. You're sharing this great adventure called life. And so allow yourself to look at this collaboratively instead of a them against us kind of situation. And you deserve to have pleasure your whole life long, whether it's sexual or otherwise. So go for pleasure.
Yeah. So Dr. Patti, where can people reach out to you and connect with you and find you online?
You can find me at drpattibritton.com, which is my name, drpattibritton.com. And that's my home site, where I have information about how I work with my clients and some of the trainings that I offer in the world. And at Sex Coach U, that's sexcoach.com, where I train professionals to become qualified sex coaches all around the world. And that's my online training site. So please visit it. And thanks so much for having me. This is a great conversation. It's so important that we talk about this.
I agree. Thank you so much for your time.
All right. Bye-bye now.